Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham Dhammam Sangham Namasami. Welcome again, everybody. It's very lovely to see you all online and also here in the room. Well, we just celebrated Wesak on Sunday, the full moon of May, and the Buddha's birth, Enlightenment and Death Day, and really quite an auspicious occasion in the Buddhist world. People get very excited about Wesak. It's the big day of the year, the sort of Buddhist Christmas and Easter rolled into one, and perhaps Transfiguration as well. You know, when Christ may have become a liberated person. So it's a really huge occasion in the Buddhist world, and I've been watching a few different celebrations around the world, different, mostly bhikkhuni places, listening to various talks from various people. And today I was looking at Mahaparinibbana Sutta, which is the most beautiful sutta. I think I mentioned it last time I was speaking. I don't know, can't remember when exactly, but Mahaparinibbana Sutta, in Digha Nikaya number 16, epic sutta, outlining the last 3 months of the Buddha's life. And it's very moving. I find it very moving. This 80-year-old man, you know, really not healthy at all, just about keeping it together, because he made a vow that he wouldn't pass away until word had got around. People were able to recognize that this is what was happening. And and he went on this great pilgrimage, huge distances. He was on the move the whole time through those 3 months, even at his ripe old age. And meeting with so many different people and giving so many teachings. And it's just very touching to read. It's the last words of the Buddha. So I think that's why perhaps it was very carefully documented, you know. It's been preserved. We're a bit unsure about many of the years of the Buddha's life, exactly where he was and when various teachings were given. We don't really know. But in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta we have a very good idea of just what happened in that last period of time, the Buddha's life. And also at the beginning, when he became the Buddha, we have some idea as well about the first teachings that he gave. The various first suttas have been well documented also. And these are the earliest Buddhist teachings. Actually, the Mahaparinibbana Sutta has been embellished. It's thought, which is also very kind of poignant in a way, you know, that we want to make more of things, and we want to bring in a few miraculous happenings and just to highlight the significance of these events. But I don't actually think it's necessary to do that. I don't think it's necessary to believe that the Buddha, you know, when he was born, that he could walk straight away and speak straight away, as we hear in some suttas, and that when he passed away, the trees burst into blossom on the spot. I mean, perhaps they did. I don't know. But I don't feel that's what's really important. Just as the Buddha didn't emphasize psychic powers. He said, yes, you can develop psychic powers on the path. It's possible. Some people do, and some people don't, you know. But it's not actually what the path is about. It's not what the path is for. And in fact, these things can be a distraction on the path. The path is very simple. There's one excerpt in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta that I've just been talking about, where Sariputta meets the Buddha for the last time. You know, the Buddha's on his wanderings and he comes to where the Sariputta's staying, and they have some time together, and then the Buddha moves on. And Sariputta knows this is the last time he's going to spend with the Buddha, and he's quite enthusiastic and praising the Buddha. What a great teaching! What a great dispensation! What a great ministry! And of course, Sariputta is like one of the two main male disciples of the Buddha. He had two principal male bhikkhu disciples and two principal bhikkhuni disciples, and they were like his kind of right-hand people. And so Sariputta and the Buddha had a very long-standing relationship, and it's very moving. So Sariputta's praising the Buddha and saying, you know, there has been nobody to compare with such a person as the Buddha, and all the Buddhas, past, present, and future, teach in the same way. And the Buddha actually reprimanded him a little bit and said, well, how do you know that? But Sariputta wasn't deterred, actually. He said, well, I get the drift of I have this much understanding that I can appreciate the teachings that you've given. And he gives a lovely summary. He says all the Buddhas, past, present and future, present being Gautama the Buddha, this is our Buddha of the age that we're living in, and we're lucky enough to be born in the age of a Buddha, to have the chance to receive the Buddha's teachings. He says all the Buddhas, past, present and future, have taught in the same way. They teach what? They teach three things. He says they teach the 5 hindrances. They teach the 4 satipatthanas, and they teach the 7 bojjhangas. You might be thinking, what are those words? Well, you may know very well what they are. The 5 hindrances, the 5 niranas, are the obstacles on the path for us, the mental obstacles that we come across, don't we? When we start meditating, we start to realize, the mind has actually some obstructions. There are some difficulties here. There are some challenges I have to face in order to develop spiritually, in order to purify the heart, purify the mind. And then the 4 satipatthanas, the 4 resorts for mindfulness, the 4 places where we should place our attention, place our awareness in our practice. Body, feelings, mind, heart, and the mental processes, thought processes. And the 7 bojjhangas, do you know what they are? Bojjhangas. The 7 bojjhangas, the 7 factors of enlightenment. This is what develops as we practice these 7 qualities. Okay, I'm going to see if I can try and remember them now. Investigation of Dhamma, so this curiosity, this fascination with the path, interest, enthusiasm, mindfulness itself, concentration or stillness, effort, tranquility. There's another one. I know what the last one is. What's the one before that? Piti, rapture, and upekkha, equanimity. And there's actually an order to these. So there's the more energetic qualities, investigation of Dhamma, effort and rapture, and then there's the more calming side, the more the stilling, the tranquility and the equanimity, and mindfulness sits right in the middle of those. These 7 factors, these 7 qualities, we develop on the path, and they quite naturally grow, and they're considered to be very healing qualities. Not only that, but even to consider them, even to bring them to mind, even to chant the Bojjhanga Sutta, which is simply listing these 7 qualities, is traditionally considered to be a healing chant. For anyone who's sick, this is the contemplation that the Buddha himself recommended. Consider the 7 bojjhangas, the 7 enlightenment factors. So, it's very interesting to me that the Buddha often pointed to the fact that we may not have certain qualities, but if we just bring them to mind, then they tend to grow. Good qualities tend to grow. Bringing them to mind, paying attention to them. So it's certainly worth considering the 7 enlightenment factors, and not to think that they're somehow out of our reach, not at all, not at all. So I really love the balance in this short summary from Sariputta of the Dhamma, teachings of the Buddha. I mean, there are so many ways to talk about the teachings of the Buddha, right? There are so many other aspects, but I find it interesting that he pointed out these 3 in his expression of gratitude and celebration of the Buddha's dispensation. And there's a kind of balance there, because we've got the 5 niwaranas, the 5 kind of enemies of development, and the 7 positive qualities that come. And right in the middle we have sati, the 4 satipatthanas, mindfulness of the 4 resorts, the 4 what are described as pastures, the 4 places where our mindfulness can develop, where we can rest our mindfulness, we can apply our mindfulness. And that's really all there is. Body, feelings, mind and thoughts. I think actually I'm going to speak a bit now about the 5 hindrances, because we've been sitting, and I don't know about you, but for me, meditation is a sure way to come in contact with the 5 hindrances. And the beauty of that is that without attempting meditation practice, without actually making the effort, the determination to, in this case, come here and sit together, when we're at home, or when we're not at a particular session of meditation, to actually make the effort to make time for meditation practice, to fit it into our day. If we weren't doing this, we wouldn't actually have a clue about how the hindrances are afflicting us, I suspect. We might have a sort of hint of a sense of being a bit of a restless soul, maybe, or being a bit prone to laziness, but honestly, we would not have a clue about what we're dealing with if we didn't attempt this mental training that meditation is. So, we can feel glad, actually, quite honestly, feel glad when we have the chance to grapple with the hindrances, because at least we're aware of them now. At least we're actually looking at them instead of ignoring them and just perhaps even going along with them, blindly going along with them. So we're caught up short, aren't we? When we start meditating, we suddenly start to realise, oh, yeah, my mind is a bit wild, really. My mind is not in my control. I can't just shut it up. I can't just stop thinking. I can't just dive into a state of samadhi, a stillness, of tranquility. Well, you might be able to, actually. I'm speaking generally. This may not be true for everybody, but for most of us, it's quite humbling, isn't it? We start to recognise, oh my goodness, I've sat here for half an hour and I had maybe a couple of minutes of presence, sort of feeling that I'm here at all, or noticing the body, or being aware of the breath. And, there we are. But the important thing is that we can spot the hindrances. Hindrance spotting is a very good way to practice because it keeps you here, it keeps the mind alert. So really, to be willing to look out for the hindrances, to name them, to label them, and we're halfway there already, So noticing what is it that's not enabling me to just sit very quietly and peacefully and be present and watch the breath and the body. I'm assuming that for most of us meditation involves some kind of body awareness and often breath awareness. These are definitely very good resorts for the mind. Feelings, body. To try and be aware of our thoughts is very tricky, isn't it? Because we can immediately get caught up in them. So it's actually quite a difficult object of meditation. So I really thoroughly recommend simplicity, body awareness, breath awareness, and feelings in the body as a way of anchoring our minds in meditation. And from there we can maybe be aware of the mind and what the mind is doing. And this is where the hindrances come in. So that which takes us away from our object of meditation. And noticing it, as I say, noticing the process, noticing the monkey mind. We're halfway there. We're halfway there already. And then we can actually note what is going on here. Why is there a kind of obstruction to simple meditation practice? So we know the five hindrances. I'm sure you all know them. Desire, aversion. So wanting and not wanting, restlessness and sleepiness, dullness. These two pairs, lots of two. Anyway, the pair that's aversion and desire, and the pair that's sleepiness and restlessness. And then the fifth is doubt, which is always to do with thinking about this, that and the other. Best thing to do with doubt is to let go of doubt, but it's not always easy to do. And the Buddha gave some really lovely similes for these hindrances, which I really enjoy. I'm going to give you two sets of similes as I talk about them. See if I can manage without getting all confused. The hindrance of desire, wanting, sense desire. Do we recognise this one? Wanting anything really, just wanting not to be here, wanting something that's not present. Hungry, thirsty, too hot, too cold. Wanting, remembering something that was really pleasant in the past and hankering back after it. Or looking to the future, looking forward to something, that holiday, whatever it is that may obsess the mind. It oftentimes is what takes us away from the present moment. So we can notice that for a start. We're not here anymore. We're somewhere else. And the same with aversion, which is just the other side of the coin, isn't it? Not wanting to get away from, disliking, and all the thoughts that can come up, the difficult relationship, and obsessing about the way we're going to sort it out, or the awful person who said such and such to us, and so on and so on and so on. But the most important thing is when we see the mind going off, just to note, is there aversion? Is there craving? Is that what it is? Is that what I'm dealing with? And once we know that, that tends to weaken it. It's like a little sprite or something that comes along but is very, very shy. So if you're not looking at it, it will come close and stay with you. But if you look at it, it will scuttle away. it will leave, it will dissolve, it will fade. So the seeing is everything. And then we can observe the hindrance for a while. We're sitting, we're meditating, we're feeling a yearning and a longing for something. So then let that be your object of meditation and see it and see what happens to it. But the Buddha also gave remedies for these hindrances, and I'll go into that. But first the similes. The Buddha said the hindrance of desire, he said it's like being in debt. It's like we're owing. That burden of debt is there. He said it's like a pool of water that's coloured with some dye, so we can't see clearly. So it's a obscuration of view. We've lost the plot. We're seeking, and the mind is confused by that. He said the remedies: bring in the Dharma teachings, bring in the teaching of impermanence. Remember anicca sanya. So whatever it is we're longing for, we can be very clear that it doesn't last. It's impermanent. The object's impermanent, we're impermanent, and the longing is also impermanent. So bringing in anicca sanya, the contemplation, just the idea, just the reality actually, bring in that reality of impermanence and see how that helps to let go of the craving, the desire, the longing. And the other thing he said is, if we're longing for a particular thing, a piece of food or a person, or even an experience, some vision of some experience that we want, he said, remember the four elements. Bring in that contemplation, earth, water, fire and air. To remember that everything is made up of these four elements. That's all. There's nothing special about any particular thing that we're longing for. See how it's composed. Dissect it, divide it up into the four elements. Or if it's a body that you're lusting after, a person, just remember the 32 body parts or 31 body parts. Just remember what that body's actually made of. So all these reality checks can come in, and they're so valuable when we've got the tinted water, the tinted spectacles. We're in debt because we're seeking something it's unbalancing us. We want to recognise that there's nothing missing, And so these contemplations can really help as remedies for desire, four elements contemplation, and anicca sanya, contemplation of impermanence. And for aversion, hatred, irritability, the whole spectrum, the whole gamut of negativity, not wanting, pushing away, the mind that's averse. The Buddha said this is like a person who's sick. It's like an illness. It's like a disease. To see it in that way, it's like a tumour. And the other simile he gives is water that is all heated up, boiling and bubbling away. And when it's boiling and bubbling with aversion, we can't see clearly. We can't see through it. The mind again is confused and agitated and perturbed and disturbed. So we have to cool it down. So first to notice when this hindrance rises up. There's something I don't like here. It can be anything from mild irritability when the phone rings to absolute hatred, remembering some awful thing that's happened. Or, it can take us by surprise. We can be feeling that we're quite peaceful and calm, and then suddenly some old aversion can come up and really shock us, It's like people often think when they start practicing that we're good people, And then you start realising what's in the mind, and it can be really quite disturbing sometimes. We can feel, well, I thought I was a good person before I started meditating, and now I'm realizing how, disturbed and really quite unpleasant I am. I have these really unpleasant thoughts, really horrible, horrible thoughts. And this is, let's remember, again, this is something to celebrate, because it's simply clearing out, it's clearing out the dark corners. We don't have to take responsibility. We don't have to make it mine. Just recognize this poor heart, is suffering. There's a lot of nasty stuff that just needs to be allowed to free itself, with the goodness, the kindness, the amazing virtue of mindfulness, this amazing virtue that we are cultivating. Even a moment of mindfulness is a great gift to the world. It's a great benefit. It's a great virtue. So we can just remind ourselves of these things so we don't get kind of bowled over by the negativity, and don't take it personally, letting it go. And the remedy the Buddha gave for this is, of course, loving kindness. Loving kindness. This is the time not to think about the body parts or to think about the elements, but actually just to bring up a sense of well-being. May I be well. Compassion for the suffering that we're witnessing right now, this aversion that we're experiencing. This is the call for loving kindness and compassion. And we can really develop these qualities. It's quite remarkable how, when the mind is negative and averse, we actually have the ability to bring in loving kindness right there. Isn't that amazing? It's like we can do that. We can really heal. It's almost like a parent and a child. We can always see the mind is in these two places. There's the screaming baby, and there's the parent who's loving, patient, kind, allowing and soothing, and, slowly, slowly, the screaming baby can calm down. So it's quite remarkable, this capacity we have to bring in loving kindness where there is aversion. And then the other pair of hindrances, sleepiness and restlessness. Restlessness, the Buddha said it's a bit like being in prison. We can feel that sense of trapped, can't get out of this, very uncomfortable, wanting to get away, agitation. These qualities, he said, it's like a pond or a bowl of water it's wavy, it's choppy, it's agitated. We can't see clearly because of the waves, big waves on the water. And, it's a tough one, because the remedy the Buddha gave for restlessness, so this is when we're sitting and we just don't want to be here. We want to get up, we want to do something else, or we're fidgeting around. It can be both physical and also mental. So the body can feel really ill at ease and really uncomfortable sitting still, but also the mind can be agitated, tormented even. And the remedy for this is actually to focus, to actually work for stillness, work towards samadhi, to concentrate the mind. You might think, well, that's impossible when there's restlessness in the mind, but not so. Because again, if we simply know what we're doing, we have the toolkit. First of all, we recognize restlessness as arisen. This is restlessness. This is uddhacca kukucca, as the Pali word. This is agitation, and there can be a quality of remorse also. We can be agitated because we're thinking about things that we've done, things that we've said, that we regret. And this is often paired with restlessness. It's one of the causes of restlessness. That's why sila, virtue, is so important for us, to keep developing, keeping the precepts, doing good, avoiding harm, because it's harmfulness that creates this kind of agitation for us. It's not the only cause of restlessness, but it's part of the hindrance of restlessness. So we can recognize that when it arises, remembering this is good. When it arises, it's good. This is something good. This is like clearing out. We don't have to make more of remorse. We just recognize it when it arises and let it go. We don't need to prolong or punish or, guilt trip. No, that's not at all fruitful. But just to work with restlessness when it's present. It's coming out. The reason it's present is because it's on the move. It's moving out, basically, if we're simply present. Keep practicing, keep meditating with it. And so this remedy of focus, of concentration, which seems so difficult when we're restless, but actually just noting the restlessness and remembering the remedy and bringing it in will help us enormously. So what do? Focus more, come more to one point. If you've been focusing on the breath, then focus on one aspect of the breath. If you've been focusing on the body, narrow the field of awareness down. Something more precise, a smaller area, and really encourage oneself to stay with that. It's helpful to work with the breath and the body together. That really helps us to stay focused. And if it's really impossible to sit still, then of course we can get up and do walking meditation. But also again, focusing on one thing. It could be the feet touching the ground. It could be the breath. Whatever it is, it could be listening to the sounds around. But let it be one thing and let the mind keep at it. And the restlessness will dissipate with this support of focus, of concentration. Sleepiness, the Buddha said it's like being a slave, like being enslaved. And it really is, don't you think, when we're sleepy? It's very difficult. If we give way to it, we're really enslaved by it. It's got us. We're trapped. And in a different way from the feeling of being imprisoned by restlessness, it's more like I can't move, I can't think, I can't do anything. I'm just subsiding, just collapsing. The Buddha said it's like a bowl of water or like a pond that's full of weeds, full of growth, completely obscuring the view. The weeds growing, like that image, of sort of inexorable. The way you sleep sort of creeps up on you, and then it gets stronger and stronger, and the eyes are going down, and the energy's going down, and there's a sort of a bit of a sick feeling in the tummy when you try and fight it. All you want to do is just fall asleep, give in. And the thing is that if we're very tired, then maybe we just need to go to sleep. But if we're on a retreat and we've had a good sleep, and we know that if we were to get up and do something else, we'd be totally fine, totally alert and awake, then we can recognize that this is something to actually start to battle with, start to try and work against this one. So, recognizing this can recur for people again and again in their practice. And so when it comes up, what do? Well, the remedy is light in a word. So opening the eyes, looking at a candle, looking at something, looking at the sky. In our meditation, we can have our eyes open, it's not a problem. Just to bring in the light element. So we can perk up a bit. And taking deep breaths, energizing the body. These simple methods. Stand up. And it's hard to sleep standing up because we fall down. So we tend to stay awake, won't we? Just out of a protective sort of impulse. And if it's really, even standing up, we're starting to flag, then walking meditation. Again, just walking, exercising, but with that awareness, with the focus, with the intention to continue meditation. So working with sloth and torpor, fourth hindrance. And then the last hindrance, doubt. Doubt. It can be a really challenging, defeating kind of a hindrance if we let it grow. So we need to notice it straight away when it arises. And it's always to do with thinking, and it's thinking about, how we're practicing often. The should I do this or should I do that? Not settling on an object. Bringing in doubts about the teachings, doubts about how to meditate, advice we've been given about meditation, cogitating around that, questioning that endlessly. It has a quality of kind of circular, like a broken record, round and round and round. Repetition. We never quite get to a conclusion, but we keep going backwards and forwards. This kind of quality. The Buddha said it's like being lost in the desert. Lost. We're a lost soul. When we're caught up in doubt, we can't make any kind of progress. And the similes of the water, he said, it's not just like a bowl of water with weeds growing in it. It's like a bowl of water with weeds growing in it that's in a dark room. Completely impossible to get through that, to see to the bottom. What is the remedy for doubt? It's the Dhamma. The Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha. This is the remedy for doubt. When we're struggling with doubt, we need to spend more time taking in the Dharma teachings, contemplating the Dharma, listening to the Dharma, reading Dharma books. But in the moment when we're meditating, we need to drop those thoughts. We need to just stop. How do we do that? Remembering what we're doing, noticing the hindrance of doubt, first to see it, first to understand it. With all the hindrances, this is the case. First, know what's happening, and then it's not so very difficult to apply the simple remedy of coming back to the body, coming back to the breath, coming out of the head. And one can almost feel, I don't know about you, but I can often feel it's almost as if the energy comes down from somewhere up here, and we can just bring it down, to the ground. And it even helps sometimes just to touch the ground, just to sort of earth oneself, come back to the body. Because as we know, the body's always present. It's always here and now, and it's honest, it doesn't lie, it's sincere. Whereas the mind that throws up all these hindrances is deceptive, is not to be trusted, I'm afraid. Really. We start to recognise that, don't we? That the mind is a bit of a trickster. It's not always our friend. It can work against us and our best intentions. And it's very interesting to see that, because we tend to identify with our thoughts and think of them as me, but no, not at all. No, there's cause and effect there. So there's all the past karma. And when we really get good at watching the mind, we can see that it's absolutely not in my control at all. It just does its own thing. And it's a beautiful thing to start to recognize that these are not my thoughts. These are just thoughts. And as it says in the Bible, in Job, it says there is nothing new under the sun. There is no such thing as a new, unique, important thought that I can call me and mine. It's just all recycled stuff. For how long have we been listening to this recycling of rubbish, that's just distracting us from reality? So I don't have a very high opinion of thoughts, thinking, even if you feel, we sometimes feel the thoughts I'm having are really wise, really, wow, I should write this one down, and sometimes on retreats you see that, people writing stuff down. Oh, no, please let it go. because nothing important will be lost if we just let go of thinking. Nothing important. If it's something we really need to remember, it'll come back, guaranteed. So the important thing to remember in our meditation practice is not to make much of thinking, but always to be ready to let it go. Come back to the body, come back home to the present. Thinking will take us away from the present. It'll take us into the past. It'll take us into the future. We're lost. We're lost. So doubt needs to be seen and needs to be let go of, just simply through redirecting the attention and coming back to the body and the breath. So that's a little bit on the hindrances. And, you know, for me, this is so relevant, not just for when we're sitting together meditating or sitting alone meditating, which is good to do, of course, every day, at least twice a day. No, it's relevant all the time, all the time. And we can really help ourselves so much if we do the hindrance spotting practice whenever we're awake. We can bring it in. We really can. It's not so difficult if we just apply our attention, apply ourselves. We can be doing anything at all. And we can notice when desire comes in, when aversion creeps in, when there's restlessness, when there's sleepiness, or when the mind is obsessing about something. We can really start to notice, truly start to see how these things are arising and passing throughout the day. And we can get to know what tends to trigger them and what helps to relieve them in our everyday life. So the hindrances are not just for when we're sitting. I would really encourage everybody to consider these 5. And, you know, it's funny really, but when we really take them on board and we're looking out for them all the time, the first thing is our mind becomes very sharp and we realize that this practice is a continuous process through life. How wonderful is that? And the other amazing thing is that these hindrances become like friends. It's like, oh my goodness, we can turn it around completely, because if we're noticing them, then we're kind of like befriending them. We know how to work with them. We know what the remedies are, and we can just watch them then. Watch them arising, watch them lasting a little while, and then inevitably fading away. And we start to get this real taste of freedom, because we're the master of our own minds. The master, not of our own, but of the mind, this one that we're carrying. We start to have a sense of, rather than being a slave or a sick person or a prisoner or in debt or wandering in the desert, we're alive and present and well, and we don't owe anything to anyone, and we're free, and we know what we're doing. So, you know, this is something where you can see how even the hindrances, when they're in our consciousness, we're mindful of them, can become our greatest friends. They're the yardsticks. They're the signs of our progress on the path. How awesome is that? So I really wish you well with the hindrance spotting and the obliteration of the hindrances through these skillful means. Just day after day, bit by bit, chipping away. And every single time we spot a hindrance and are able to apply a remedy, we can see how we're moving forwards inexorably on the path to Nibbana. Ayya. So we've got about 10 minutes, not very long, sorry, for questions or comments or reflections, but anyone's welcome to share if you feel. Yeah, Marilyn, thank you.
I wanted to thank you, Ayya, because I kind of compartmentalized. I put all the hindrances in a box, and I've used them during my meditation practice. You know, when you think, okay, I recognize it, don't push it away, try and investigate a little bit of what's brought that up. But I haven't really used that in my day-to-day away from the Christian practice. And so it was good to just clarify that for me, come back and realize that, you know, you're not on the cushion all the time. So you have to have that in your awareness when you're out and about as well. So that was very helpful to me, and just sort of reminder of how you can deal with the hindrances if they come up during meditation. And I just wanted to ask you a question. At the very beginning, you said, you were talking, you said parinibbana. And so I'm not clear on what that is, because I'm thinking nibbana, and then could it be something after nirvana, but it can't be. So I guess I'm confused by that word.
Thank you for asking. Yeah, it's a really wonderful word, parinibbana. Nibbana is the complete freedom of somebody who's fully enlightened, free from greed, free from hatred, free from delusion. So free from all these hindrances and all the causes of them. Parinibbana is the complete extinguishment that can only happen when a body dies. You know, so one can experience nibbana and continue to be alive. So there's still the five khandhas, there's still some karmic residue, there's some propelling force that continues the life until death. But parinibbana is when it all comes to an end, because the body also dies. So a person who's fully enlightened, when they pass away, there's nothing there's no sort of unfinished business. There's no desire or aversion that is propelling the chitta, the mind, the heart forward into another rebirth. For most of us, when we pass away, we'll have some perhaps quite strong energies, or maybe very attenuated, maybe very weak energies, but something that propels the consciousness into another birth. So you could say some kind of unfinished business. Like there's some karmic residue through ignorance, basically, through not seeing clearly. So parinibbana is the complete cessation that happened for the Buddha when his body passed away, and the same for anybody who's fully liberated, any arahant. Although the term is really only used for the Buddha's passing, because this is understood to be a very incredible and amazing occasion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to come in? Got a few more minutes. Corey, hi.
I just want to say thank you very much for that talk. It was fantastic, and I love that hindrance spotting. It reminds me of the movie that was released years ago, Train Spotting, and I just think the lightness of it, and like hindrance feels always such heavy to me, and negative and shameful. But I think if we can lighten it a little bit, we can be less judgmental, and we can look at it and recognize the remedy that we need to sort of unearth some of the hindrance.
Thank you so much. Actually, yeah, you know, yeah, that movie. Sorry for those connotations, everybody. But you know, that's such an important point, that we can be almost a bit scientific, a bit clinical about the hindrances. Honestly, this is a helpful approach. See the mind and body in a rather scientific manner, and remembering always that these things are not me, they're not mine, they don't belong to me, they're passing phenomena. So just as you said, Corey, it's really helpful to just kind of, you know, recognize this is present. Okay, what do I need to bring in here to balance it out and to help it along, to help it on its path to oblivion? And that's really the work, you know. And the tendency of the mind is to identify with and complicate things, but we can actually keep it very simple. And I think the beauty of the five hindrances is that there's just five of them. It's amazing. You know, anything that comes up in our practice that stops us from peacefully meditating fits into one of those five categories. How awesome is that? This is the Buddha's great, insight that comes again and again in the clarity of these teachings, the simplicity. And we can honestly find that any hindrance that arises will fit into one of these five. How wonderful. Actually, occasionally, you can have multiple hindrances. Have you noticed that? So you can put a hindrance into a few categories at the same time. I can be restless and averse and craving at the same time and full of doubt. But I wouldn't recommend cultivating multiple hindrance attacks, but just noticing if they happen. So we can actually see sometimes, what I'm experiencing could go into two or three of these categories, in fact. Whatever. The main thing is to see it and to recognize it and then to work with it. Okay, just a couple of minutes to go. Any last thoughts, comments, reflections? Great. Let's sit quietly together. Oh, sorry, Sanghamita's got something for us.
When we officially end, do you want to ask if anybody would like to see photos of Kelly and her baby?
Okay. Okay, we'll just sit quietly for a minute and then we've got a little bit of news from Sanghamita. Some rather lovely news. Now you're going to sit there and be desiring to know what it is. But just watch that hindrance. So I'll ring the gong in a minute or two.